So let's get it clear right now. Israel should get the out of Gaza, and they should end the occupation entirely. Otherwise, they're in the land stealing business, which is what they've been in for the last at least 58 years.
Okay, Dinesh, your response to that.
Well, the United States didn't get the F out of Japan after the attack on Pearl Harbor. This was something that the Japanese started, and the United States not only finished it, but after the war, there was denazification, there was a restructuring of Japan. So I'm just saying that when you start a war, it's not going to end your way.
Do you think that the ceasefire agreement that's been implemented between Israel and Hamas is a good idea? And furthermore, do you think it's something that's going to last? Check out this debate over here on the Piers Morgan Show between Dinesh D'Souza and Cenk Uygur about this peace plan and how it might unfold and whether or not it's a good idea or not. So we'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Talk to you since this peace plan was presented. I read it in detail, and I found myself nodding at a lot of it. It seems to me to be the most likely framework to get this war over.
Yeah. So my sense of it is that Trump is actually trying to get the peace. Obviously, he's massively biased towards Israel, and this deal is biased towards Israel, but I would take it. And so now I'm not Hamas, so it's easy for me to say I want the hostages home. I've wanted the hostages home from day one. So in the deal, the hostages get released. Hamas does not rule Gaza. I'm happy with both of those things. But the critical part, Piers, is Israel has to leave Gaza. So right now, what they're saying is, yeah, we're going to get what we want. We're going to get our hostages back, but we're not going to leave. And they claim they are getting a security perimeter, which is just more land. And I told you from day one, this was never about self-defense. This is about land acquisition. They're trying to build greater Israel. So then Netanyahu says yes to the deal because he has no choice because Trump makes him, which I like. Good job by Trump on that. Then he goes home and says in Hebrew, not in English, oh, don't worry. We're going to have the IDF deep inside Gaza. So in other words, we're not going to do the peace deal. We're going to get the hostages back, and we're going to grab as much of Gaza for Israel as we can. So that's the part that I can't stand. If I was Hamas, I'd sign the deal anyway, take Israel's excuse away from them. They've been using the hostages. That's why Netanyahu didn't want the hostages back, because he wanted it as an excuse. But it doesn't really matter, because even if you take that excuse away from him, what he's going to do next is Hamas didn't surrender enough. They didn't turn in enough weapons. I have to murder more Palestinians. I have to ethnically cleanse them more. So when the hostages are returned, Piers, and we come back on here, will you tell all of your Zionist Israeli zealot, yes, okay, you guys betrayed the deal. You were supposed to leave Gaza, and you didn't. So Cenk was right, and all of your critics were right. This was always about stealing Palestinian land. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. I guarantee it. So I just want to set ahead of time so then people don't try to squirm out of it. Oh, no, they didn't turn. They turned in 12,000 guns, but we wanted 13,000 guns. We have to keep murdering. We have to keep stealing land, right? So let's get it clear right now. Israel should get the out of Gaza, and they should end the occupation entirely. Otherwise, they're in the land stealing business, which is what they've been in for the last at least 58 years.
Okay, Dinesh, your response to that.
Well, the United States didn't get the F out of Japan after the attack on Pearl Harbor. This was something that the Japanese started, and the United States not only finished it, but after the war, there was denazification, there was a restructuring of Japan. So I'm just saying that when you start a war, it's not going to end your way. Now, I do support the Trump plan. Through my adult lifetime, I've seen so many bungled peace plans that the fact that this one is kind of close to signature, I think is itself incredible. I think Trump is a real estate guy. He's looking at Gaza and he's saying, I see a bunch of rubble. Why don't we have nice buildings and clean streets and people in suits going to work and maybe a Trump hotel? Why don't we have trade and prosperity? So he's offering a different path to the path that we've seen so far. And on the balance, I think it's a good path. So even though I think for Israel, it's painful to exchange terrorists for hostages, that's hardly a fair part of the deal. But I think Israel is right to swallow and take it. I think also the demilitarization of Gaza and having an international authority mainly made up of Muslims and Muslim countries I think is a good way to go.
Cenk, the suggestion that Tony Blair might be a leading figure in that has enraged a lot of people. Others say, look, he got peace in Northern Ireland. He's been a Middle East peace envoy. Iraq was a disaster, but everything he's done since has been aimed at trying to forge peace. What's your view of somebody like him being involved?
So Tony Blair is a toady for the Israelis, and that's super obvious, and I'll give you a fact that proves it. Do you know who's funding the Tony Blair Institute to the tune of $350 million? Larry Ellison, the same Larry Ellison who is the biggest charitable donor to the IDF. He gave them $16.6 million in the middle of a genocide. Oh yeah, go murder more Palestinians. Here's my charity to Israel. Go steal more land. So that guy is paying off the guy, Tony Blair, who's supposed to be neutral here. No, he's got 350 million reasons not to be neutral. He's going to be biased in favor of Israel in every way, shape, and form. He has been bought by Israel. He helped to start the Iraq War. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with America. At the time, Israeli leaders said that it was Israel's #1 enemy, and Tony Blair said, "Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. We'll invade them, sir." And now we're told that he's neutral when he's obviously and literally and empirically bought by Larry Ellison, who's a massively pro-Israel zealot, near lunatic, honestly. He's saying, "Yeah, I'd like to donate charitably to a genocide." It's unbelievable. And so, one more thing about what Dinesh said. So look, these guys always say, "Oh, well, look, there was World War II and we dropped a nuclear bomb." Like, why? But what we were supposed to learn from history. So yes, the Mongols went into Baghdad and killed 800,000 people, every man, woman, and child, about 1,000 years ago. Does that mean we should all do it? No, we're supposed to get better as we go along. And that's why we passed laws after World War II that we should not do indiscriminate mass murder of civilians. And the only country that doesn't agree, Israel. They're like, no, we reserve the right to do mass slaughter of civilians. That's because they're totally outside of the rule of law. They're a pariah terrorist state, and we've got to stop funding them.
There's a debate about the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but even the people who say that that was a bad idea think that there should have been instead a land invasion of Japan, which would have itself have produced untold casualties. So there's no real debate in America. Hold on, let me finish. You keep shouting. Let me finish. So the point I'm trying to make here is when Japan starts it, the United States gets to finish it, and there's no need to have a, quote, neutral authority that somehow neutralizes the influence of the victor. Look, if Israel had carpet bombed Hamas and carpet bombed Gaza on October 8th, they would have gotten away with it. The reason that they are getting all the heat now is they dragged it out. And in fact, they are trying surgically to distinguish between Hamas and civilians, an extremely difficult job to do when Hamas grabs its own mothers and daughters and puts them right in front of Hamas and says, "We dare you to shoot because that's going to make you a murderer."
Dinesh hits the nail on the head. It's obvious that the war lasted so long only because of Israel trying to do as razor-sharp precision as humanly possible. Very difficult thing to do when Hamas purposely embeds itself within the civilian population, which is why the number of civilians, unfortunately, are what they are. As far as the greater view of this peace plan, it is interesting that both Dinesh and Cenk are in agreement that this should be implemented, that this peace, again, they don't necessarily agree on why or what, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, but they say that this is a deal that should be taken. And I think the construct of this deal as a stepping stool towards different, better, improved relations between Israel and Arab countries, especially moderate Arab countries in the Middle East, and trying to reshape the Middle East as a group of people that do business together and therefore won't be at odds with each other, won't be killing each other, I think is a very, very interesting and very good move, given the scenario that we have. Again, an idea that goes way beyond the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. And Israel and Hamas, they will have to deal with that as a unit together, but the greater implications of what it could mean for the entirety of the Middle East, and having moderate Arab states on board with this deal and putting pressure to tamper down terrorism, I think is something that's good for everybody as well. I do like and appreciate that Dinesh also brings up this idea of what took place after World War II. He didn't even bring up the dropping the atomic bomb, but this sort of being present in Japan and being present or being vigilant, overseeing the denazification of Germany, those are important steps, because without those steps, you don't have a lasting change. If you continue to educate in the same way and not destroy the ideology, well, then it's just a matter of time until that ideology is imbibed by the next generation, the next war starts, right? So when Japan, the reason that we have such good relationship with Japan at this moment in time, was certainly something that wasn't the case 80 or 90 years ago, was because that after World War II took place, after we dropped the atomic bomb, there was a process of de-imperializing Japan that normalized its relations with us, and now that we're on very good terms with Japan. We're not looking over our shoulder thinking that they're going to bomb Pearl Harbor the next time they get the opportunity. Same thing with Germany. We have a working relationship with Germany because the Nazification of Germany is no more. The ideology has been stamped out in Germany. And so now we can have a good, normal relationship with Germany. Well, it's got to work the same way for Gaza and other areas where there's, for several generations now, been this same thing taking place, with different terrorist groups, all funded by Iran and now also Qatar. You have a radical ideology that permeates even the youngest of children, in the youngest of TV programming, in the youngest of elements in the culture, to act a certain way, to live out a certain way, to dream about fulfilling a certain mission that is directed towards Israelis. And without eradicating that ideology, there can't be any talk of two-state solutions. This fantasy, this nonsense, non-starter, which I don't even know why it's still even in our discussion following October 7th. Again, in an ideal world, in a perfect world where this would just be based on, okay, well, you want this, well, let's make a circle and then cut it down the middle, you'll get that, then everyone sells off into the sunset. That sort of make-believe expression of foreign policy it's based on Western fairy tales. What should be done and what needs to happen is, just like in Japan and just like in post-war Nazi Germany, there needs to be a radical overhaul of the culture, of the ideology that's currently in place. And I think the moderate Arab states would be a good starting point to achieving that in Israel, that not only the Israelis and their neighbors can get along, but the Israelis and their more broad neighbors across the Middle East can normalize relationships. And when they have normalized relationships, won't be killing each other, won't be seeking killing, won't be doing the tit for tat, won't be retaliation and this and that. It can be a normal functioning society that spreads across a region that has been plagued with violence. And so I'm cautiously optimistic about how all of this unfolds and going forward what it's going to look like. But we'll be with you along the way and talking about it as it all does unfold. And if you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.